Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to talk about The Fireman by Joe Hill. So, as usual, we're going to talk non-spoilery thoughts and opinions up front, then jump over to the spoiler section where we can talk in more detail. So, remember to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and let's begin. So, The Fireman is the fourth novel by Joe Hill, the son of Stephen King, and this story really feels like one of his biggest homages to his father's work and actually a little bit of reference to Harry Potter. So, this book feels like Joe Hill wanted to kind of write his own version of The Stand, so he kind of did this, but he also apparently had some love of Firestarter, so he kind of married those concepts together. So the story is a post-apocalyptic tale centering around a group of survivors who all have contracted this disease that is the source of the end of the world, basically. It's called the Flare. Or no, sorry, not the Flare, that's that's Maze Runner. It's called Dragon Scale. And what happens is whenever anyone gets Dragon Scale, they potentially have the ability to spontaneously combust. And it's more than just a potential. It happens so frequently that it becomes the concept of the end of the world and everybody thinks everyone's going to die, and then it's getting to the point where people are losing their minds and just starting to go out and kill people because they think if they just kill people that could potentially have the disease, then they'll be like, cutting its lifespan short or something like that. So everything just goes cuckoo banana pants almost immediately, and the world and society basically goes straight downhill. So the story centers around a young woman named Harper Willows, and she is a nurse at a school. And while all this stuff is going on and the world is basically collapsing, she's with her husband, and she's telling him basically, like, they're looking at the world and the state of the world and sees how terrible and depressed it is and stuff. And they basically make an agreement that if either of them caught Grayscale or Dragon Scale, Grayscale's from Game of Thrones. Oh my God. Like if they caught Dragon Scale, then they would kill each other, or whoever was infected would, whoever wasn't infected would then kill the infected one so that they wouldn't have to suffer the way they're seeing everyone else suffer. So when Harper realizes that she has been infected, she kind of freaks out because not only is she infected, but she then finds out also that she's pregnant, which completely changes her mind about the deal she had with her husband. So she wants to live. But little does she know, her husband is kind of insane and has been slowly going insane. So when he finds out, he's still sticking to the whole idea of trying to kill her. So she basically has to run away from him, and it kind of sets off the entire kind of journey part of this post-apocalyptic kind of story. So The Fireman has so many direct, explicit references that it's kind of amazing. Some people have found it to be derivative and they kind of dislike it because of all the references and stuff. But I think it's such a great homage to the appreciation and love of his father's work, Joe. Like, Joe is clearly referencing a lot of his dad's work and wrote this book similar to how he wrote Nosferatu, in that this is supposed to clearly exist inside the same Stephen King multiverse. So there's references that are seen in The Stand in here, like Nozzle Cola and stuff like that, and the quotes like "My life for you," similar to some of the characters, the way they declare their life for a figure in the stand and stuff. And there's a lot of just small little kind of Easter egg things that are very much references to stuff like The Stand. So the entire setup of this makes me feel, so this, a lot of this is honestly probably headcanon because the way King's multiverse works and the way that I interpret it is so headcanon. But Joe Hill has definitely jumped into that sphere, and I love it so much. That's one of the reasons why I love Nosferatu so much, because it has so much explicit Shining and the Dark Tower connections and it connections and stuff. There's just so many different connections and references that I think it's so awesome that King and Hill can write completely separate stuff but put them in the same multiverse that grew out of Stephen King's universe. And he's not even so, like so held on to his own stuff that he's like, no, son, you can't write anything that takes place in my universe and stuff. So there's this great back and forth collaboration that comes from this. So apart from The Stand, I think there's a lot of references in here, not direct references to like the events of Firestarter, but the concept of Firestarter, where the little girl has pyrokinesis. The entire nature of the dragon scale disease causes spontaneous combustion, and that entire, like, just so there's like a lot of fire, and the name of it being the Fireman and all this stuff. So, but there's also some very interesting kind of references and hints to Harry Potter, like book 5, I think, like the Order of the Phoenix. Yeah, like, because they more or less create a the group of survivors kind of, you know, they see themselves almost in that way. The structure of it and the way it's built and the way these characters come together and stuff is very similar to how the Order of the Phoenix exists in like Dumbledore's army and stuff, and a lot of that in a lot of ways. So you can see a lot of King or a lot of Hill's references. It's just, for some people that definitely is a detraction and it will take away from it and it makes it feel less original. But for me, it feels like he's just basically paying respect to all these other stories that have greatly influenced him. So from that angle, I really, really like it. So I want to talk in a little bit more detail about some of the more explicit references and connections and things. So I want to jump into spoilers. So before we get into spoilers, I do want to say that the writing of this is really well done. Joe Hill has proven himself to be a really good writer, similar to his dad, in that he loves his character development. He is very patient with the time that he takes exploring his characters and the world that they live in, and just kind of that meandering kind of melodic sort of way of telling, like where you feel like you're in this world for an extended period of time. Very similar to The Stand, at least in my experience, because when I read The Stand, it felt like I was living in this situation for so long, and it became so second nature in a way, like in a really weird way. I felt more transported in that story than I have in a lot of other stories. And this story has the similar effect. It's like we're going through this apocalypse with them. No one has a direct, explicit plan of action or anything like that. They're just trying to survive and just trying to be. So it has this almost comfort, yet everything is always tense, kind of just like being in it and being a part of it. So like that's kind of the best way I can describe it. But as far as writing, Joe Hill is really good. His other stuff has also been proven to be really good. He's good at his development. He's good at his characterization. His prose are really nice. Like he's a really well accomplished writer, and it's like perfectly evident that good writing is freaking genetic, more or less, or at least he just learned well from his dad. And to some degree, I guess he learned really well from his dad, because Joe, I mean, granted, he doesn't have nearly the library that his dad does, but his endings, by and large, are better than his dad's, because his dad has more misses than hits than he does with his endings. But the ending of this book felt a little more like King than it did like Hill. So we're going to talk about that more in spoilers. So spoiler warning for The Fireman by Joe Hill. So one of the main things that kind of happens in the book is so around the time when Harper like runs away from her husband and he's trying to kill her and stuff, she runs into a man named the Fireman. You know, he's the Fireman. He just becomes known as that or whatever. So the Fireman, the titular character who the book is named after, he is a former fireman. Well, actually, he's not even a former fireman. He's just somebody who found a bunch of fireman gear and decided to use it to help with the whole fact that the world is a lot more fiery than it once was. So he is also someone who is infected with dragon scale, and instead of actually just spontaneously combusting, he somehow, more or less through like meditation and calmness, learns how to control it. See, what dragon scale actually does is give people innate pyrokinesis, so they can control and emit fire if it's done correctly. But if it's overdone, or if they're completely out of control with it, then they will self-immolate and they will, you know, spontaneously combust. And so the Fireman actually saves Harper in a situation where he basically goes like fiend fire from Harry Potter, another decent little Harry Potter reference. He can make constructs with this fire. He makes like a phoenix, and like he makes other shapes, and he uses it to fight off these people that are going around and burning people because they think, oh, maybe they'll have the dragon scale or whatever, so we got to kill them. So they're trying to just wipe people out. So they end up in a lot of situations have to use this ability in order to, you know, protect the refugee camp. But also at the refugee camp, it is discovered before Harper gets there, but when she gets there, she joins in. A lot of people that are infected with the dragon scale have the capability to, I don't know, like sync their minds up and like share a kind of peaceful kind of like empathetic mindset, which allows them to control the dragon scale, which basically allows them to go into a state they call the bright. So they basically commune with the dragon scale and commune with the fire to a degree, and along with each other, and it basically keeps them from accidentally spontaneously combusting. Because if they have a lot of explicit emotions and gets really hyped up, then their bodies will start to smoke, and that's like the sign that they're about to explode into fire. So by them going into the bright, they basically can control this. And that's one of the main setups of the story. Like the idea of her husband being crazy and being part of this group of people who are going around burning people and killing people and stuff. And she's with the refugee camp and stuff, learning more about the dragon scale and everything, while trying to just basically in constant fear that her daughter or her child is going to be born with the disease. And so she's just trying to live and just trying to get through and just trying to make it. And that's why, to me, this very much feels like Joe Hill's The Stand, because The Stand very much was that. Yes, there was a very explicit, devil character, and, the Mother Abigail was basically an angel character and stuff. So it was very clearly good versus evil. But so much of the story was just characters going around and just kind of being. They're just existing in this post-apocalyptic world. There's not like everything is not hyper-focused on the main plot, trying to resolve the plot at the end and everything. So a lot of that happens here, to the point where the book almost ends on a cliffhanger. They get to the point where they have to deal with Harper's husband, well, not ex-husband and stuff. They kill him, and then a bunch of other stuff happens, and the fireman ends up dying, but more of them kind of get a grasp and understanding of how he was able to use the fire and control the fire. So we kind of get an implication that they'll be safe because they can use the fire offensively and stuff. But really the story kind of ends on a cliffhanger. It's like the husband dies and like the fireman dies and stuff, and then Harper just kind of goes to a different refugee area, like, cause a lot of stuff's happening, people dead and stuff like that. Like, so she just goes with a different group of people and just kind of continues. Like, we don't get an ending of the post-apocalyptic situation. We don't get like hints that it'll all just kind of work out, blah, blah. It just kind of, it feels like we're just here for a snapshot chapter of this life and this scenario and this situation. And it just kind of goes on with that. So I appreciated the ending and I liked it because it feeds more into my own headcanon, because to me, and it's weird for me to talk about it like this because I haven't reviewed The Dark Tower, even though I've read it. So I want to talk more about it. So spoilers here for the nature of The Dark Tower a little bit. But actually, I don't know. It's more headcanon and more big picture than it is spoiling like parts of the actual book. But in the Dark Tower series, we learn about worlds that have moved on, basically worlds that have ended, because like as I've said before, the Dark Tower series is the multiverse explainer video, so, or video book series. So in that series though, there is an instance where they kind of slip into different worlds. And there's a part where it is very clear that they are in the same world that The Stand took place in. And I feel like Joe Hill took that idea and was like, this could be another world that has moved on, or another part of Keystone Earth or something that like moved on as an ended or whatever. So it feels like this is just one of those worlds that, because a lot of the worlds in the multiverse are crumbling and ending and stuff, and because that all has to do with the Dark Tower and whatnot. But like, so it feels like this could easily fit in as a adjacent world or a parallel world to the world of The Stand, and it's just like another method by which the world ended, and it all just needed to, because the whole thing that's going on with the Dark Tower. Okay, I got to start that series because I feel really weird talking about it when I haven't actually reviewed it. So that's going to be coming up here soon. So make sure you're subscribed to catch those videos, because we're definitely going to be doing a Dark Tower reread here soon. So yeah, let me go ahead and close out this review by saying I really enjoyed this book. This is definitely one of my favorite Joe Hill books, and I think he's doing a great job following the footsteps of his dad, but doing it in a different way and like kind of expanding on it. So I really appreciate it, and I can't recommend it enough. I think it's so much more enjoyable if you're a big King fan. If you're just like, if you don't get these references and you don't see the connections and stuff, then I think the story might come off as kind of bland. Because like I said, it is very much just existing in this world and just trying to be. So if you don't see all the little Easter eggs and all the little stuff like that, because I think the book was built like that. So if you don't see all that kind of stuff, you might just be a little underwhelmed. So be prepared for that idea, I guess. So I'm going to go ahead and close this video out by asking, have you all read any books that have an interesting use of fire as either a power source or just an ability or anything else like that? I'm really curious about it, because this with Firestarter and the Fire Force anime and stuff, there's a lot of interesting things going on with fire, at least in my life right now. So remember to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and I will talk to you all next time. Peace.